In this video, we will learn how to print and/or email sales orders. The sales order module is an additional module, and if you don't already have it and you want to add it to your CenterPoint installation, you can contact our sales department. The first step in setting up the sales order module to print or email sales orders is to set up your preferences for those. And we would do that by going to File and Preferences. Underneath Preferences, for the email settings, you'll go to Email Setup, and there's two preferences you need to select here. Now, these preferences are discussed in more detail in the Preferences Email Setup video, which you can get to by selecting Email Setup and then clicking on the Help button. This first setting is where you're going to talk about or tell us about your outgoing email server, and then the other setting that will be set is the one called Sales Order, where you're going to set up a template of what you want that email to look like that's going to go to the customer, and then what format or what form is going to be used for the sales order attached to that email. If you're going to be printing out sales orders, you'll also need to choose the preference for printing sales order underneath Sales Orders and Printing. We're going to go to the Database tab, and on the left-hand side, you're going to choose which form or which forms you're going to print when the sales order is printed. And then you'll choose the printer that those are going to go to and the number of copies. When a sales order is filled, it is turned into an invoice, and so then you'll also want to select which printer you want the invoices to go to, the form of the invoices or the format of the invoices, and then the number of copies. And you can also at that time print a packing slip, so you can choose the printer that you want the packing slip to go to, the form for the packing slip, and then the number of copies. We'll click Save there. Next, you'll want to verify that you have the email address set up that the sales orders are going to come from. And you'll do that underneath Setup and General and Email Addresses. And if you don't already have the email address that you're sending the sales orders from, you'll add it as a name and then the email address. And then in the sales order column, you'll mark that email as the send from. Now, you can send it to other internal emails by marking them as the carbon copy or the blank carbon copy in that same sales order column. You'll also be able to tell us whether or not you want to send a copy of that email to the salesperson for that customer. And you have the option of saying that you want no email or that you want them to be the carbon copy or the blank carbon copy on the email. We'll click Save on that. Next, you'll want to set up some defaults on the setup of each of your customers as to how you want the system to handle that customer when they are selected on the sales order entry screen. So we're going to do that underneath Setup and Customers. And I'm going to highlight a particular customer and edit them. And the place where we're going to set the setting is on the Email and Print tab for those customers. If you want to email sales orders to that customer, you'll need to put in a name and an email address. And in the sales order column, you'll mark them as the send to. Now, if you want to send it to additional email addresses, you can add their name and their email address and then mark them as the carbon copy or the blank carbon copy. You can add additional email addresses, and every time you do, it adds a blank line below, so you can add as many email addresses as you need. Now, when you're entering in a new sales order for this customer, if you want the print button to be marked to print the sales order by default, underneath Print Sales Order, you will select the option for Yes. If you don't want it to be marked by default, you'll set that setting to No. Now, if you right-click on that setting and set it as the default, that'll become the default for any new customers you create. I'm going to click Save on that customer, and I want to point out that on this customer setup screen, there is a mass update button. So if you wanted to mass update that print setting for multiple customers at one time, you can do that by going to the mass update button. and then clicking next, choose printing, and then choose the print sales order option, and you could set that setting for multiple customers at one time. Next, we'll go to the sales order entry to see how that customer behaves during sales order entry. So I'm going to go to Processes, Sales, and I'm going to choose Sales Order Quick Entry, but we could also choose just regular sales order entry. I'm going to choose that customer, and what you'll notice down here at the bottom is that immediately once that customer is selected, the Print Sales Order button is got a green check mark on it. So when I click Save on this sales order, it'll print the sales order. Also, the check mark is on the email button as well, because I said I wanted to email a copy of the sales order to this customer. So both of those are checked by default. For either one of them, I could click on the button and I could choose that I either don't want to print it or change the printer settings. And then for the email, I could either choose that I don't want to email it by taking the check mark out, or I could change the text of the email or the form that's being attached to that email. I'm going to select an item that we're going to put onto this sales order, and then we're going to enter in a quantity for that. I'm also going to attach a document to this sales order. We can attach documents to all of our transactions within CenterPoint by clicking on either the scan button to scan it in directly from our scanner, or the pay-per-click button to attach it to this from documents that are already on my server or on my computer. So I'm going to drag and drop a document in here. And if I want that document to also be emailed to the customer when I email them the sales order, I could check the box for email, and then it'll be emailed to the customer when the sales order email gets sent. It'll go as an attachment to that email. Now, everything I've just discussed for sales orders is the same for quotes. I would just change this to quotes, but the behavior of the customer setting is the same for quotes as it is for sales orders. Okay. When I click Save is when it's going to print and email that sales order to the customer. So that is how I would go ahead and email or print a single sales order at a time. But some people prefer to enter in all their sales orders and then maybe print them at the end of the day or at a prescribed frequency throughout the day. So if you want to be able to print or email multiple sales orders at a time, we can do that from Processes, Sales, and Print and Email Sales Orders. This is also the screen that we would be able to reprint sales orders from. So first, what we have to do is we have to filter for the sales orders that we want to select. So we can do that from saved filters by selecting saved filters. There's only two out there by default. One is all unprinted sales orders, and the other one's unprinted quotes. So if I select that, it brings me up some unprinted sales orders, but it doesn't include the one that I entered in today because I printed that one. Okay, so you might, if you're trying to reprint the ones that you entered in today, you might need to create your own filter. So you can create your own filter by going to the filter button and then choosing what you want to filter for. So I want sales orders for my company, Alpine Sports. I want those that were entered in on today's date. And I don't want to include quotes. I only want to include the sales order. So I'm going to just choose sales order and add that to the list. Now I can also filter for any additional items that I want to filter for. Once you've selected all of your filter options, you can click apply and it will use that filter one time. But if it's a filter that you want to be able to reuse in the future, you can click save and you could give it a name. I'll call this today's sales orders. And then click OK, and it'll run that filter. Now, because I gave it a name, it is now one of the named filters. So when I click on the down arrow here, I can always select it again at a later time. If you create filters that you don't want to use anymore, or you don't want to have on the list anymore, all you have to do is select it and then click the red X to the right, and that'll remove the filter from your list of saved filters. I'm going to go back to the one that says all unprinted sales orders. So if I wanted to print or email these sales orders all at the same time, I could click the check all button and that would check all of them, or I could have check marked the ones that I wanted individually. If I want to both email and print sales orders for these customers, I can go ahead and click the email print, and it'll email it to those that are set up for email and print it for those that are not. If I want to disregard the email settings and print the sales orders for all of the customers that I have there, I can just click the print button. Before I do either of those, though, I can verify that I have the right form and then the right printer selected for any print sales orders being printed. And then for emails, I could verify the email message, make any changes to that email message that I needed to, or change what form is going to be attached to that email. I'm going to click close, and that is the way that we can print and email multiple sales orders at one time. Now, if you want a report where you can verify whether or not an email was sent, you'll go to reports, and then the report that you're looking for is going to be found underneath audit reports, and it's called email log, and that'll give you a log of all of the emails sent out of CenterPoint.